This week on The Watchman, as 2020 comes to a close, a new Middle East is taking shape. A top Israeli official joins us to share how enemies have become allies and are forming a united front against the Iranian axis.
Every Israeli should be very grateful for the tireless efforts of this administration, not only to bring peace to Israel, but also to bring peace, prosperity, stability, and security to the whole Middle East.
Plus, we look back at some of our top Watchman stories of 2020. From biblical archaeology to groundbreaking innovation, get the inside story on what's happening in Israel today and what 2021 has in store. All that and much more, only right here on The Watchman. And welcome to The Watchman. 2020 is finally in the history books. It was obviously a very difficult year on many levels, not only in the United States, but around the world. Yet through it all, God still sits on the throne. He will not abandon us. And the book of Psalms says he is a stronghold in times of trouble. We're going to take a look back this week at the good. Yes, there was still some good, and the bad from 2020. Now, when you think of bad in the Middle East, the Iranian regime is at the top of the list. 2020, however, was not very kind to Iran's leadership. It began with the demise of terror kingpin Qasem Soleimani in January and was bookended in late November with the death of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the mastermind behind Iran's nuclear weapons program. Fakhrizadeh was killed when gunmen ambushed a car he was traveling in near Tehran. No one has claimed responsibility, but Iran's leaders are blaming Israel and vowing revenge. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly made an historic trip to Saudi Arabia recently to meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and Israel's relationship with its new peace partners like Morocco, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain continues to deepen. Top Israeli official Alon Ushpiz joins us this week from Jerusalem to break down these important developments. He's the Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry and has the inside story on the new Middle East that's coming together right now. Take a look. Director General Ushpiz, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us how the Abraham Accords are already bearing fruit, not only for Israel, but also for its Arab neighbors.
The Abraham Accords are probably one of the most exciting and I think also the most important things that I've seen in the course of my career. This is not less important than the peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan. This will bring tangible deliverables to Israelis, to Emiratis, to Bahrainis, to Sudanese, to Moroccans. And I also believe very strongly that it will increase security, stability, and prosperity for the whole Middle East. So, just to give you an example, in the course of December 2020, we will have probably around 50,000 Israelis going to Dubai. And that's, I think, the most telling expression of a warm and intimate peace between not only governments, but also between people. Without the US administration, without the leadership of President Trump, without the facilitation, the wisdom, the efforts, and the knowledge of his closest advisors, including obviously senior advisor Jared Kushner, this could not have been possible. And I think every Israeli should be very grateful for the tireless efforts of this administration, not only to bring peace to Israel, but also to bring peace, prosperity, stability, and security to the whole Middle East.
That UAE relationship in particular seems to have a lot of potential. I think obviously of the tourism potential there and also the shared high tech. Tell us a bit about how that relationship is blossoming right now.
In my mind, the most telling thing that I've seen in the last 4 months is the very quick pace of signing things and implementing them. And secondly, the fact that the first cooperation between Israeli private sector and Emirati private sector was about how do we fight together COVID-19 is, I think, exactly where peace in the Middle East should go. This is not only about something between governments, this is about between people that want to do good together. And last but not least, there is a moral value base, the dividing line between good and bad. And this really is about a coalition between people who are looking to do good. They are not looking to pour money, evil money, into killing people, into inflicting damage and pain on people. This is about how can we improve the daily life of millions of people in our region.
Sudan is obviously another very interesting case. It's had peace talks with Israel over the past few months. It's a very unstable place, as we know, but tell us about the long-term prospects for peace between Israel and Sudan.
Well, Sudan is indeed a unique and special case, and it is obviously part of the strategic effort of creating a club of the Abraham Accords, but the club is an expanding one. There is a Sudanese obligation to bring about prosperity to their people. And I think every decent human being can and should affiliate himself with such an emotion coming out of the Sudanese government. With the help and the efforts and facilitation of the US, the Sudanese government and people will find Israel as a very forthcoming partner exactly on the things that the Sudanese government say that they need. Very much hopeful that we'll do agriculture together. Very much hopeful that we can do the fight against COVID-19 together. There are things that we can provide in the spirit of what we're trying to do together that will simply make the life of everybody much better.
There's a lot of reasons, obviously, for this great coming together of Israel and its Arab neighbors. I think of Israeli innovation first and foremost, and the great economic benefits for the Arab world. But Director General, we also have that shared Iran threat, which is looming over the region and which threatens not only Israel, but its Arab neighbors. Tell us a bit about how the Iran threat has worked, in a sense, in bringing Israel and its Arab neighbors closer together.
All of us, we don't have any other choice but doing whatever we can. In my mind, it's not only about peace and security, this is also a moral obligation. We have to do everything we can in order to fight a nuclear Iran, to prevent it. That's a very diplomatic sentence, but to block all paths that the Iranians have to a bomb indefinitely. This is about eternity. This is not about 5 or 10 years from now. This is till the end of days. And secondly, disrupt and diminish, roll back, totally roll back, Iranian regional malign activities. And we need to fight this through a coalition that obviously is led by the US. And through this coalition, tell the Iranians, government and people, that we are against this thing that you're trying to achieve. And secondly, attach a very high price tag to their attempts to either acquire a nuclear weapon or to control events on the ground in the Middle East. Our partners in the region are an indispensable element in the fight against this. And once again, I really have to pay my gratitude and appreciation for what the US administration is doing.
Thanks again to Director General Alon Ushpiz for that great update. Well, coming up, we're shifting gears to one of the top Bible archaeology stories of 2020, a stunning discovery in Jerusalem that brings to life a crucial period in biblical history. You won't want to miss this. Stick around.
Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel organization in the United States with over 10 million members. But we are still missing one, you. As a member of CUFI, you'll be part of a growing movement that's catching fire across the nation as Christians discover the biblical importance of standing with Israel and the Jewish people. You can defend Israel virtually by responding to CUFI's action alerts and sharing CUFI's pro-Israel content on social media. You can support Israel locally by hosting a CUFI event at your church. Get involved nationally by attending our Washington, D.C. summit. or visit the Holy Land with Kufi on a life-changing Israel tour. Visit www.kufi.org or call to help ensure that the relationship between Israel and the United States remains strong and secure. It's a movement for such a time as this.
And welcome back. It's one of the pivotal events of the Old Testament. After 70 years in captivity, the Jewish people leave Babylon and return to Zion, as described in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah in the Bible. Now we've got some very important new archaeological evidence that is bringing that period to light. Our good friend Zev Orenstein of the City of David joined us with the fascinating details. Take a look.
Well, Zev, thanks so much for joining us here on The Watchman. It is always great to have you.
Always great to be with you, Eric.
Yeah, and you've always got a great archaeological find or discovery from the City of David in Jerusalem to share with us.
Archaeologists, when it comes to the story of the return to Zion, you have the Babylonian destruction in 586 BCE, the destruction of the Temple of Solomon, the exile of the Jewish people from Jerusalem to Babylon. They're exiled for, the Bible tells us, 70 years. And then there's the period of the return to Zion under the leadership of Zerubbabel and others. And they come back, and really Jerusalem is in a sorry state. And it goes on like that for a number of years until the time of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king of Persia. Now you might say, the cupbearer, what's the big deal about that? It's just the guy who brings the king his wine. But in ancient times, the cupbearer was not just the person who brought the wine. The cupbearer was the official that the king trusted most in the whole kingdom. Why? Because this was the person who would be responsible for giving the king his glass of wine. If there was ever a plot that someone had against the king, it was up to the cupbearer to know about it. And it describes in the beginning of the book of Nehemiah really the dilapidated state of Jerusalem, how foxes were running through the buildings, and really there was no one living there. But from an archaeological perspective, there was very little evidence of the return to Zion of that time, of the Persian influence of Jerusalem, the administrative influence in Jerusalem at that time, until a discovery that was announced literally just this week. 2 seals, Persian period seals, which show the administrative influence of Persia in Jerusalem, confirming the biblical account, of course, of Nehemiah being the governor sent on behalf of Persia to rule Jerusalem. And of course, it says in the book of Nehemiah that in 52 days, Nehemiah rebuilds the walls around Jerusalem. So these seals are going back to the very, very early period of that return to Zion, of the beginning of the rebuilding of Jerusalem. It's not Herod's Jerusalem with all its glory from 2,000 years ago. This is something of small beginnings that would lead to something great down the road. But it's really, up until this discovery, this period, the period of the return to Zion, the period of Nehemiah, was what archaeologists refer to as a black hole. And that is beginning to be filled in the City of David.
And hey, Cyrus, the Persian emperor at the time, the Persian king, issued a decree to send the Jewish people back to Zion, a pivotal event in the Bible. So to see evidence of that come to light, I think is really stunning, right? It's
amazing. Nehemiah is known for rebuilding Jerusalem. We've discovered part of his wall. The declaration allowing the Jewish people to return to Zion. We have the Cyrus cylinder in the British Museum in London. We have these seals now discovered in the City of David, affirming the Persian rule of Jerusalem during the time of Nehemiah. And you put all of this together, and it comes back to something that I've said many a time, really 2 things. One is that when you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. And at the same time, there are still those out there who are denying our shared heritage in Jerusalem, the biblical heritage of Jerusalem. And as we see from these discoveries and so many others, that our shared connection to Jerusalem is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact.
Thanks again to Zev and the City of David team for all their great contributions to the Watchman Show in 2020. Well, up next, it's one of my favorite stories of the year. It combines Israeli innovation with the diet of John the Baptist. Find out what I mean after the break.
Kufi's mission is to educate and empower millions of American Christians to speak with one voice in defense of Israel and the Jewish people. There's several ways you can learn more about Israel every day through QFI's dynamic resources. The QFI Coffee Break is a weekly bite-sized Israel lesson delivered to your email inbox. Dive into topics like the forgotten Jewish refugees, Israel's agricultural communities called kibbutzim, and the Hamas rocket threat, with options to dig deeper each week. Every lesson can be read in under 5 minutes while you're making a cup of coffee. Plus, stay informed on all the latest news out of Israel and how it affects you by subscribing to QFI's Daily Briefing. It's a daily news roundup of important Israel-related headlines, so you're always up to date when it comes to Israel. Follow QFI on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for daily content, including videos, news articles, breaking news, devotionals, fun facts, and more.
Welcome back. There is a severe protein shortage in the world, especially in the developing world. So naturally, Israelis are stepping up with creative solutions. I visited a unique Israeli food tech company in the Golan Heights that's all about biblical protein, or what I like to call the John the Baptist diet. What does that mean? Take a look. Well, Dror, Hadi, we are here on the beautiful Golan Heights where some of the most groundbreaking food tech in the world is happening right here and coming from an unlikely source for some people. Where are we right now and what are we going to see today?
You just entered the world's first commercial grasshopper farm, and that's the future of protein because it's healthier for humans and it's more sustainable to grow. And we're about to see how we grow them and maybe even have a taste.
Each room like this has about 70 cages of grasshoppers. You can be up 1,000 grasshoppers in one cage. That's a lot of grasshoppers. So this is part of the magic, Eric. This is actually wheatgrass. Wow. All right, we grow it ourselves and in another place. And this is actually the food of the grasshoppers. They eat it. They grow very healthy and very rapidly. All right, they eat a lot of it.
Yeah.
And this is part of our magic.
And you may say that actually the grasshoppers eat superfood.
Correct.
And you can taste it, by the way.
Yeah, you can. A lot of people use it in their green shakes in the morning or protein shakes.
We will do that. Now,
It's
can I pull my mask down for a second? Okay, here we go.
Go for it. If it's good for the grasshoppers, it's good for us. No?
Very good. The grasshoppers have good taste. Excellent. Before we go on, the first question I have to ask is, why grasshoppers? A lot of people at home might be saying, grasshoppers, oh my gosh, that's edible. Why grasshoppers? How did you discover this?
Well, actually, the story started about 40 years ago. I was born in a kibbutz in Israel. And as a young boy at the kibbutz, my grandparents used to tell me stories from the 1950s. Israel used to suffer from locust swarms, grasshoppers flying in and eating all the crops. They used to run to the fields, trying to scare the grasshoppers away. Wow. At the same time, they saw other Yemenite and Moroccan Jews coming and collecting tons of grasshoppers and eating them. So as a young boy, I learned that grasshoppers are both food and they are kosher.
Wow.
So
they're kosher.
Yes.
They're a very clean insect, right?
Absolutely. The cleanest. They eat only fresh grass with no pesticides, no fertilizer, so it's super clean. Already today, 2.5 billion people across the world consume grasshoppers as part of their diet. So they are very high in demand across Africa, Asia, and Central America. Yeah. The problem is that today the supply comes from collection in the wild. Okay. So availability is very limited to about 4-6 weeks a year. Yeah. Prices are very high. In this facility, we can grow them year-round at a much more efficient way.
John the Baptist, in the New Testament, in the Bible, we know that he ate locusts and wild honey.
Really? Exactly.
Yeah.
And also in the Bible. Yeah. Because on Leviticus, they are mentioned as kosher food. That's the only insect that is recognized as kosher. We'll start with the biblical way, because in the Bible, they ate them as a whole. So these are whole, dried, ready-to-eat grasshoppers, and you can eat the whole thing.
Wow, let's see.
Let me just show you. This is a package with 4,000 grasshoppers. That's about 1 kilogram, 2 pounds of grasshoppers, ready for shipment to restaurants in Europe.
Wow.
Now we have a chance to actually eat them.
All right. Okay.
We can do two things. First,
all right.
You can eat the whole thing, but I suggest you remove the wings because they get stuck in your teeth. And I'll teach you exactly, and I'll teach you how to pray before you eat them.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Prayer before my meal.
Yeah. So
Okay.
please repeat. You can just throw it that away.
Okay.
Just repeat after me.
Okay.
שהכל
Shakol.
נהיה
Nahia.
בדברו.
Bidvalo.
Everything is done by God's voice.
Amen.
Amen. Here it goes.
What do you think?
It's good.
Does it taste like a bug?
No, not at all.
Exactly.
No.
It's food.
It's food.
The healthiest protein you ever had.
This is good.
Yeah.
And protein after you exercise, after you work out is also a good thing. I'm not kidding. It's not bad.
These are gummies. This is a nutritional supplement, gummies made of grasshoppers with honey. So what we're eating here is a very healthy product that John the Baptist used to eat. This is John the Baptist diet.
Wow. It's a
And-
biblical food. John
Exactly.
the Baptist, locusts and honey, grasshoppers and honey.
And tell me if you can feel the grasshopper inside. Because that's one of the advantages grasshoppers
No,
have.
this is a
no,
gummy.
taste it.
Okay.
Can you taste it?
Of course.
Texture, flavor, smell.
Tastes like a gummy. It tastes great.
Exactly.
Yeah, give me another
Honey
one.
flavored.
So Pepsi and Doritos
IKEA replacing the meatballs from beef to insects.
and the Seattle Mariners baseball team.
They serve the whole insects as a snack at the ballpark. So since IKEA are doing meatballs, we are doing sausages with grasshopper protein.
Okay.
So those are the sausages.
Wow.
It's a combination of beef and grasshopper protein, and we can fire up the grill.
Folks, you don't get to be 6'5" without eating lots of different foods.
I'm gonna grow your hair.
Yes.
Here you go.
Just
Hey,
put
you
hair
told
on
me
my
that.
chest, as
Go,
they say.
sure.
Okay,
Like
guys, bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
To the grasshoppers.
Pretty good, huh?
That's delicious.
And that's
I'm not
beef
kidding.
with the grasshoppers, so we get much more protein than a normal sausage.
That is very
That's
good.
healthier
good.
for you,
Wow.
more sustainable.
This is very good.
My guess is John the Baptist used to eat a lot of those.
Sure, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hadi,
Thank you very much. Pleasure having you.
Israeli innovation, groundbreaking, happening right here in the Golan Heights. Amazing to see. Gentlemen, thank you. I'm pretty sure there aren't a whole lot of people out there who are sad to see 2020 go. But what about 2021? Well, I expect some current patterns that we've covered here on the Watchman Show to continue. That means more peace deals between Israel and Muslim nations. It also means Israeli innovation will continue to make headlines and more incredible archaeological discoveries will be uncovered that prove the truth of the Bible. You can also expect the bad to get worse. Iran and its radical allies and the regime of Turkish President Recep Erdogan will continue to behave dangerously, and Russia and China will do the same. Now, as for COVID-19 and the political situation in America and Israel, it's still too early to say where it's all headed. But I know one thing for sure. God is in control, and He will never leave us or forsake us. 2 Corinthians says we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Folks, that's exactly where many of us are as we enter 2021. But behind the scenes, God is working it all together for our ultimate good. So be encouraged. And thanks for joining us this year here on The Watchman. We look forward to seeing you in 2021. Until then, Happy New Year. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.